To add another layer of sinister onto this, Jolee messaged a friend the night before stating this. And then they had to turn to the thing that no human could ever imagine doing. As she gets closer to the water to take a picture, is what it seems like, there's a Hello my fellow night crawlers, and welcome to a brand new video. As usual, grab your blankets and grab your snacks and get comfortable, because today we're going to be looking into seemingly innocent photos with disturbing backstories. Wow, Caden, this one's never been done before. I know. Look, I thought this one was interesting. There's a lot of interesting photos out there that are seemingly innocent but have a lot of disturbing backstory to them. And I know it's been overdone because I remember being like 10 and watching these videos on YouTube. And now look at me. 9 years later, I'm making them myself. It's crazy how it happens. All of that being aside though, I think you guys are going to love this one. Before we hop in the video though, please feel free to like, subscribe, and comment below so that way we can get this video some traction on the algorithm. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I can only do that with your help. Thank you guys so much. Anyway, let's hop into the video. Our first video comes from the YouTuber and vlogger Sarah Funk. Sarah Funk describes herself as an on-camera host, entrepreneur, and travel expert, as listed on her website. She takes a lot of pride in her travel, and is often seen on her Instagram posting all about the various locations she has traveled to. In all honesty, I'll admit, I'm a little jealous. I'd be posting about it on Instagram too if I was traveling to all these nice places, so I get it. On a seemingly innocent trip to Cyprus's Red Lake, she decides to get closer to the water. As she gets closer to the water to take a picture, is what it seems like, there's a suitcase in the water that is in the middle of the frame. It's withered, soggy, and clearly doesn't belong there. Little did Sarah know, that suitcase had the body of a murder victim inside it. The murderer is named Nikos Metaxas, who is sentenced to 7 life sentences. This was due to him killing 7 people, 5 being women that he met on an online dating app named Badoo, and the remaining 2 victims were young children and were the daughters of 2 of the women that he had killed. I think that's a pretty heavy way to start the video. So, our next photo comes from an unsuspecting group of hikers. When going through the wilderness, the last thing that people generally want to deal with are dangerous wild animals. Admiring nature is a big part of why people go out there and explore the wilderness, but of course, you need to protect yourself. There's many ways to protect yourself though if something does happen. There's like sprays, there's weapons, there's survival tips, there's like all sorts of things that you can do in the off chance that something were to happen to you. Unfortunately for our pair of hikers, they didn't exactly have all of those tools on hand. A group of 5 hikers were wandering through the wilderness without a care in the world, enjoying the sights, the beauty, the nice sunny day. As they made their way deeper into the woods, one of the party members took this picture. It reveals a 300-pound black bear approaching the hikers, roughly 100 feet away from them. The hikers had already been warned by a couple that was coming the other way to be wary about the black bear that had been following the pair. The hikers decided to ignore the advice and continue going deeper into the woods, thus leading them to where they are now. The hikers initially took note of the bear when it was around 300 feet away from them, and they continued to take even more notice as the bear kept closing in on where they were. And it eventually hit a point that the black bear was 15 feet, you heard me right, 15 feet away from the hikers. If a 300-pound black bear was 15 feet away from me, dude, I would have already been losing my mind if it was 100. I couldn't imagine the fear if 15 feet away from me, death stood before me. As the bear was making its way to close in even further, the group decided to split up and run as far and as fast as they could. Everyone would survive except for a man named Darsh Patel, the person who took the photo. The 22-year-old ran as hard and fast as he could through the woods, but met his demise to the black bear. A creepy fact about this case is that the phone that he used to take a picture of the bear had puncture wounds by the bear's teeth through the phone. Pretty creepy stuff. This next photo might seem like an innocent family picture, but of course you're watching this video, so that's absolutely not what it is. The man in this photo is named John List. John List would go on to murder every single person pictured in this photo, including his own mother. List and his family came from a rather high-end background, but one day John would lose this job and thus not be able to support the lavish lifestyle that they were once living. Instead of telling his family about the situation, he decided to pull a Walter White and not tell anyone due to his pride and ego. He desperately tried to gain employment that would somehow match the salary he was once making, but nothing ever came close. List would also take money from his mother's account to cover the finances around the home, but once that eventually ran dry, he was left with one option. And of course, this option wasn't cutting his losses, maybe getting on welfare, telling his family the situation. His idea was to murder his entire family. His whole reasoning behind this was, man, it's so humiliating and embarrassing to have to go get welfare. And I get it, you know, like there's probably an ego hit there, you know, you want to be the breadwinner of the family and you can't provide. But to kill your entire family, that's the way to go? Additionally, he thought that it would be better to just send their souls to heaven. John carefully planned out every step of this murder to a grotesque level. He killed each member of the household, brought them into the ballroom, and meticulously cleaned up the crime scenes. John would even go out of his way to cut himself out of family photos, so that way he would have no connection with the family and would completely remove himself from them. He was very careful with what he was doing, and he also took the remaining money and obviously booked it out of the state. He wasn't going to face the consequences of his actions. He's out. Unfortunately for the police, the List family apparently lived a rather reclusive lifestyle, so it took over an entire month for the family's bodies to be discovered. After 18 years of evading the authorities, the only reason List was caught was due to the exceptional work of a forensic artist that was able to show what List would have looked like as he aged. With that amazing work being done, he was eventually caught and sentenced to 5 life sentences. This next photo comes from one of the great wonders of the world, Niagara Falls. If you've never been, I highly encourage you to do so. It is a beautiful place. One thing that is made very clear though when you go to the falls is to listen to the signs. If it says don't climb on something, don't climb on it. If it says don't touch it, don't touch it. It's really simple. Just don't do the things at all. On average, 20 to 30 people die at Niagara Falls every year due to people not heeding those warnings. Tragically, a good chunk of them are suicides, but there are people that legitimately lose their life due to negligence. An example of a person losing their life due to negligence would be a woman by the name of Ayano Tokumasu. On August 14th of 2011, Ayano Tokumasu, a 19-year-old Japanese exchange student, would go to the falls. She happened to be captured in a photo by a family that shows her standing over the fenced-off ledge. As she was sitting on the pillar next to the water's edge, she stood up and lost her footing. It would then be at this moment she falls over the edge into the river, approximately 66 feet upstream from the falls. Her body would then be recovered on August 18th. This next photo comes from the Mount St. Helens eruption. Scientist David A. Johnston was one of the many people that lost their lives in this eruption. Johnston was a very talented scientist that was part of the United States Geological Survey. In his time on the team, he actively spent many months telling people that the mountain was rapidly approaching conditions that would make it erupt. Johnston was a man that oriented himself on the basis that he must do whatever was necessary to protect the public from natural disasters, even if that meant taking risks. With his work from his fellow scientists, they actually managed to convince the authorities to close Mount St. Helens to the public before the eruption. This saved hundreds and thousands of lives. On the night before the eruption, a graduate student by the name of Harry Glicken would take a picture of Johnston, his final picture. Johnston is seen right outside the observation post trailer with his notebook on his lap, smiling. In roughly 13.5 hours, the volcano would erupt and David would be swept away due to a powerful lateral blast. Before being swept away, he transmitted a final message to report the eruption. Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it. This next photo preys on one of the most terrifying things, in my opinion. That crazy X that actually goes through with, really solidifying how crazy they are. Jolee Callan was just 18 years old when she broke up with her then boyfriend, Lauren Bunner. Shortly after the breakup, Bunner invited Callan on a hike through the woods. Jolee Callan had intentions of still being friends with her ex, but Bunner had other plans. He had the mentality of, if I can't have her, then no one can. To add another layer of sinister onto this, Jolee messaged a friend the night before stating this: "If something happens to me, you'll know who I was with." Of course, Jolee was saying this in a joking manner. This obviously wasn't meant to be taken seriously, but little did she know. Shortly after uploading this photo onto Instagram, Bunner would shoot Callan in the back of her head and then once more between her eyes. To dispose of her body, he then shoved her from the top of the cliff into the trenches below. It would shortly be after this murder that Bunner would turn himself in and claim there was a suicide pact that he just couldn't go through. Of course, this was then thrown out as he was thrown in to prison for 52 years. This next photo shows a rugby team about to depart on an airplane to go compete in a rugby match. Little did this team know that shortly they would be crashed into the side of a mountain with very limited resources and a very low chance of survival. As the plane was crossing through the Andes Mountains, there was a lot of clouds that was obstructing the view of the pilots. This poor weather, combined with the inexperienced co-pilot and the fact that the co-pilot thought they were already in their designated location, caused the pilot to then descend the plane and then strike into the side of the mountain. Many of them were either seriously or critically injured. The air rescue service was notified and a search for the missing flight began. The surviving members would be out there for 72 days with no food. This was due to how above the sea level they were at the time of their crash. This allowed for basically no animals to live up there and no vegetation to grow at all. At first, they attempted to eat cotton from the airplane seats. This only made their condition worse and, in all honesty, made them feel awful, very sick. And then they had to turn to the thing that no human could ever imagine doing: cannibalism. The surviving members had to cut up parts of their once living friends just so that way they could survive. The people were eventually rescued, but only 16 of the original 45 members of that plane survived. I couldn't imagine the trauma and years of therapy that those people had to go through. Godspeed. This next photo is honestly just tragic. Proposals are supposed to be a very intimate and special moment between a couple. Now imagine that you propose to your love interest but don't even get to marry them. That's what happened to this unfortunate couple. Steven Weber and Kenesha Antoine would go on a very nice vacation to the Manta Resort. Their hotel wasn't just a standard one though. It was a room that was literally underwater by about 32 feet. On the third day of their stay, Weber would hop in the water with a mask and fins and hold a note to the glass for Antoine to see. His note read, "I can't hold my breath long enough to tell you everything I love about you, but everything I love about you, I love more every day." He would then flip the paper over to announce the proposal. After this, he reaches into his pocket to pull out the engagement ring. As he swims out of view, Weber wouldn't surface and would die in the water. This is an absolute tragedy for the couple, and I do hope that Kenesha had the proper support system around her to get her through something so devastating. I couldn't imagine being in her position, but I do hope that she eventually found some sort of acceptance. This final photo actually comes from one of my favorite bands, Manic Street Preachers. I absolutely love these dudes, so not only do I get to go into the backstory of a band that I really like, but it's also directly relevant to what I'm talking about. Yes! For a brief history lesson, the band formed in 1986 in South Wales. The band's intentions with the release of their music were to restore a sort of revolution within the rock and roll genre. This was due to Britain absolutely being dominated by shoegaze, and acid house styles of music. Shortly after the release of their first single, Suicide Alley, Richy Edwards joined the band on rhythm guitar and greatly contributed to the lyrical process in a lot of their songs. While Richy did bring a lot to the table, he had many demons that he was fighting. Richy would often express how severely depressed he was in interviews and would actively mutilate himself. He did this through means of putting cigarettes out on his bare skin and would often carve large bits of words into his arm. These photos of Richy are out on the internet, but I will highly advise you that these are heavy. Like, when you look at them, you'll understand what type of mental anguish Richy was being put through. It's really heavy. He also suffered greatly from insomnia and would often utilize alcohol as a means to keep himself asleep at night. It's reported that he was in and out of mental institutions due to all of the mental anguish that he had suffered. One day, on February 1st of 1995, Richy Edwards would disappear. His body would never be found, and there are still questions as to his disappearance to this day. There is a pretty clear timeline of his whereabouts, but in all honesty, I don't want to go too heavy in it because this case could literally be a video on its own. The long and short of it, though, is that it's believed that Richy Edwards jumped off the Severn Bridge, a known suicide spot. His body would never be found, and his parents declared him dead in 2008. With all of this stuff in mind, here are some of the last pictures of Richy seen alive. These pictures absolutely depress me in a way. You know, who knows? Maybe these are just bad shots, bad lighting, whatever. Regardless, and with all of that put aside, just knowing that he is going through that level of mental anguish and is most likely going to take his life in the next few weeks, it just doesn't sit right with me at all. He looks tired. He looks worn down. The fact that his eye bags just look so heavy just shows to me how exhausted he is. It's very depressing stuff. And with all of that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the video. I do hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I kind of like these more broad topics where I can pick like 9 to 10 things, talk about them shortly, and toss it in a video. I have more fun that way, and I know I'm kind of taking away from a lot of my true crime roots, but in all honesty, I'm having more fun this way, and that's probably how I'm going to see the channel going in the future. With all that being said, though, before we hop in the end segment, I would like to thank my Tormented Knights and my Knighted patrons. For my Tormented Knights, we have Andrea, EB Agent J, James, Nee, Willow. For my Knighted patrons, we have Emma, Jessica, Lucas, Mary, Shizen, Teddy, Timo. Guys, thank you so much for your very generous support. It really does mean so much to me, and it allows me to bring you guys the content that you guys oh so desire. Thank you all. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed the video, why not like and subscribe? It definitely helps me out. If you didn't, though, why not dislike and let me know what I can improve on for next time. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all in the next one.